Installing a ceiling fan in a room that doesn't have one. And this is going to be the right way to do this, not the cheat way where you hang it from the drywall and it falls out 5 years later. So these are pretty common these days. They're not too hard to do. You really kind of do need attic access. Doing this on a first floor in a house that's a 2-story, or trying to do it where you have no attic access, it can be done, but it's difficult to do because you've got to get Romex or wiring from whatever your source is going to be up to the box. But these are the legal and correct way to do these. These span the joists, and that's what supports the weight of the fan. You can't just put a new work box and hang it from the drywall. That's bad. So we're just going to go over this. It's very simple, especially new construction houses. When I say new construction, I'm talking the last 30 years or so. Usually you're going to have, and Dan's here today. We're doing this job together. So he's already working on getting this apart. But here's your switch source. Most, like I said, in the last 30 years, most construction has this, where you've got a switch in the room and it controls an outlet. That happens to be over here. We've already verified 0 voltage. You don't want to work on, this is one thing you're not going to work on hot, and you see me do a lot of things hot all the time, but not this, because what we're going to be doing here is we're going to take this single gang, that's what this is called, where you got a single switch and a box. It's got just a single capacity. It's called a single gang. We're going to be taking this box and we're going to be knocking this sucker out of here. And we're going to be putting in an what's called an old work box, where it has these tabs on it. You've seen me use these before in other videos, but that's the correct way to do this. So we'll bust that box out of there. We'll cut the drywall open and insert this, and then we're going to have our source power feeding both our outlet, because Dan wants to keep the outlet switched, and then we'll have another source, and we're going to drop a piece of Romex down the wall here. So I couldn't count how many times I've done these. It's not hard. Yeah, the first time I did it, it wasn't hard, and the 100th time I've done it, it's not hard. So some of them are a little bit more challenging than others, but like I said, in this new construction stuff, pretty easy. So we'll walk you through the process. It's not hard. Like I said, we got the power verified off. The first thing that we're going to do here is measure the room. Now, most rooms are square or rectangular. That makes this pretty easy, because we're going to take our width both directions, and that gives us what our center is going to be. Pretty simple. So if the room is 16 feet, that means that you're going to have an 8-foot center. Not hard at all. So we'll take those measurements and we're going to get that marked out up here on the ceiling. All right, so we've taken our measurements and we have 65 this direction. We're going to come out 65, and we're going to come out 59 this direction. And if we do that, we're going to be dead centered here in this room. I used to spend a lot of time trying to make this perfect, and if it was 100 inches and an eighth, I'd get that to 50 and a 16th. It's not that critical. You're never going to see the difference. So we'll get that marked out by, this is really a lot easier with 2 people, by the way, because you're going to have one person hold the tape measure up here, and we're going to come up to the center and mark it. You try and do it by yourself, it's damn near impossible. All right, so this is what I mean. So I'm holding it here against the wall. Dan's over there, and he's marking it out. So that's one axis, as I would call it. Now I'm going to move my step stool, and I'm just going to come over here. Like I said, way easier with 2 people. Marked, I've got it up against the wall here. Dan's getting it marked out there. So what you end up with is 2 marks there. So let's see if I can get this thing to focus. Probably not, because there we go. So now it's real easy. We just take a little straight edge. Hell, Dan can probably almost do it without anything, but that's where you're going to be. See how he's just kind of lining it up. I used to, like I said, I used to focus on doing this with accurate engineering precision. I don't do that anymore. You know why? Because I've screwed it up and you can't tell the difference. So we already know where our center line is. Sometimes what I do here before we go and just drill this hole, I'll go up in the attic just to see what's there. You can kind of go for it. I mean, you're probably not going to hit anything that's, important. I do have a contingency plan always in case that there's a rafter here, because there very well could be a rafter right here. And then if that's the case, you can't use that. That's why we use one of these. So I always keep these as a backup plan, because this, as you can see, is only the thickness of the drywall. So if there's a rafter here, we can just screw this directly into the wood with some quality strength wood screws. That's another valid way to install one of these. So that's if there's a rafter in the way. If there's not a rafter in the way, we're going to use one of these. Okay, so now how I've traditionally cut these holes, they make a couple different forms of doing this. I use either hole saws or my Dremel. The Dremel's got an attachment that kind of has a centering piece, and you run the Dremel around. Dan's got something new here I've never used before. We're going to try it out. It's pretty nifty. It's got an attachment to catch the to catch all the drywall dust that comes down, which I've never seen before. This is really cool, but that thing goes inside of here. So we're going to try this out. Normally, if you don't have something like this, get a shop vac and somebody to hold it, because I'm telling you, this makes a gigantic mess. But anyways, this has adjustable radius on it, which is kind of cool. So you can set this for whatever size you want. It looks to me like it goes from 2 to 6? It goes 2 to 7. 2 to 7. So you can go 2 to 7 inches. That's pretty cool. So would you get this at Home Depot? Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very nifty. So $35 too. Yeah, that's a good deal. So the Dremel works good, but it throws drywall dust everywhere. So anyways, that's a cool little thing, adjustable hole cutter. So they think of everything, unlike me. All right, so we're gonna see how well this contraption works or doesn't work. So Dan's getting it lined up on our mark there, and let's hope for the best. Well, that's pretty cool. See, now I got to buy one of those. So that really saves a mess. See the mess that's inside of here? I used to hold a shop vac up trying to do that. That just grabbed everything. So very cool tool. I like that. Okay, so what we're doing right here is I'm validating what side the stud is on. Because remember, you're going to find these boxes are always nailed into a stud. There's nails on the top and the bottom here. And I verified just by checking with my screwdriver, this is where the stud is on this side, and it's open over here. So I can get this in here and move it over. So that means that we're going to extend this for the 2-gang box this direction. So I just use a keyhole saw for this. If you don't know what that is, look it up. And I could show you, but I'm lazy. But we're going to just notch this out to fit that box, okay? After we notch that out, we're going to take this box and we're just going to take a hammer and a screwdriver and we're going to bust this box out of here. You could try and cut it out if you want. I mean, these are sometimes a pain in the ass, but we got to unwire all this. And of course, this is a junction for the outlet below it, the switched outlet over here. And of course, the incoming power seems to be coming in the top. So this is just kind of a pain in the ass. Make sure if there's more than one circuit in here, which this only has one circuit, so we're good. But if there's more than one circuit in here, make sure you turn on power off, because you got to unwire all this and pull these pieces of Romex. We got to get them out of the box. See where they come in here. So yeah, see, it's dead. We already validated it. So we're just gonna unwire these, and when we bust this box out of here, we're gonna yank the box out of the hole. And when we do that, the Romex will just be in the wall. Then we're gonna fish that through into the new box, which has got plenty of inlets and outlets on it here. That's what these little tabs are. All right, so jumping right ahead here, this takes patience. So what I did was I took this and I lined it up, And I use my keyhole saw, which I guess I kind of sort of maybe promised you guys I would show you what that is. That's a keyhole saw. Okay, you get that at Home Depot. That one's about 15 years old, still works. And the way I do it, I just cut over, estimate it. It's not that critical. You know, you don't really need to measure it, just do it by eye. Okay, so the old box was in there, and I just cut a notch out of the side. Okay. And then when I went to take this out, and it was just going to be kind of too hard to show when I was doing it, I just take a screwdriver and a hammer. This was nailed into this stud here. Okay, there's 2 nails that go across the top and the bottom, between the top and the bottom there. You just take your hammer and your screwdriver and just knock it out. Then you got to very carefully kind of finagle the pieces of Romex out of the top and the bottom. It just takes patience. It's a little frustrating, but you can get them out of there. We can't cut these off because they won't be long enough. So that's why. So anyways, we got those now. So now the rest is relatively easy. So there's a header up here. We're going to go up in the attic, which just so happens to be right here. So it's not going to be hard for us to get to. We're going to drill a hole in this header like 1/2 inch, and we're going to drop that Romex down, and it will just drop down on the wall. And you know, the question of, you know, how do you secure it inside? Well, you don't. I don't know. I've done a lot of these this way, and I've never had a problem. And I'm just going to make one note here. I just talked about drilling the hole up top. Now, there's already 2 pieces of Romex that come down. One of them is going to be source, and the other one's going to be going up and over to here, right? That means that there's 2 pieces of Romex going through a hole up here already. We might be able to reuse the same hole. If not, we're going to punch another hole. If it's too tight, you know, if the hole is too tight with 2 pieces of Romex in it already, we'll just pop another one. So it looks like Dan's going to be able to reuse the existing hole. So he's feeding it through up there, and you can't see anything because obviously, but he's trying to shove it down through there, and I'm going to put my hand in here. I'm going to grab it when it comes, and I just realized we have a very big problem. There's a fire break in here. That is going to cause a problem. And let's see if we can't quite see it in the video, but there is a 2x4 going across right here. So there are 2 options. One of them is try and get it with a fish tape, and the other option is to cut a hole above where we need it and patch it. So second option, not as preferable. That's weird that that's actually here. I'm really surprised that there's a block right here. Yeah, that makes it really difficult. We may have to cut a hole here, so stand by. So you can barely see it up there. There's the fire break. So I think that's what it is, a fire break. I'm not sure why they did that way, but so what Dan and I are going to do is, this is a good idea on his part, he's going to cut a hole across where that fire break is right here. And then that way when we take this piece of drywall off, we have something to screw it back to. Normally, if you don't do that, if you just cut a free hole here, you have to put a piece of wood on the back side of it and screw it in and then screw the piece to it. But I think his idea is good. We're just going to kind of span the 2, and then we'll just stick it back on. He'll patch it back up. This isn't a big deal. You will run into this sometimes. A lot of times you can just drop it down, but not in this case. We're just not lucky. So, you know, if you're confused as to what the issue is, there's a little tiny hole in that fire break where these 2 pieces of Romex are coming through. So, you know, I suppose you could use, well, I won't even go down that path. You could use one of the, you could pull two new pieces of Romex in with one, but that's not going to work because there's a whole host of problems with that. So not to confuse you, there's a tiny hole here, there's a tiny hole there. There's no way to line up the new Romex to get it through this tiny hole right here. So we have to open a hole in here so we can simply shove that through, and we'll show you that. All right, so Dan's going to use his oscillating multi-tool. These things are kind of handy too. So we're just going to cut a little access hole. All right, Dan just finished making the cut. That tool's pretty handy. I'm so old school. I use a keyhole saw to do these, but that makes a really nice small cut. You don't lose much material. So he's just going to carefully kind of remove it. And we'll show you what he did. He kind of overlapped the stud, see? So here's the problem that we're talking about. This is the fire break that's in here. I'm calling it that. So obviously, here's our piece of Romex that he dropped down the wall. And, you know, you're never going to get that from way up top there. There's no way to line that up. So now that we have access in here, we just take this and we're just going to shove it through here. And unfortunately, you know, it's just a little bit of patchwork. It's not the end of the world. But it's very doable. This is very, very doable. So anyways, we'll feed this through and pull that in here, get the new box installed, get that patched up. So now this is out of sheer laziness as far as I'm concerned. But rather than us climb around up in the attic, I just fed the fish tape because, you know, I've got one of those. I just fed that over to Dan. Dan grabbed it out of the attic access hole there. We pulled the cable just long enough, the Romex just long enough as far as we needed it to here. And I just left a couple extra feet, snipped it off, and I'll just go ahead and pull this through as soon as he finishes taping off the Romex to the fish tape. So, you know, this is relatively easy. Sometimes it can be real hard if you're trying to, you know, if your attic access hole's 50 feet from where you need to be. But you know, that's pretty much as easy as this is. When we fed the fish tape through, we just made sure we weren't going over the top of any air conditioning ducts or anything like that. Just try and make sure that it's relatively protected. So I'm going to go ahead and start pulling it. See, Dan's got it right there. And as I yank this out of here, I'm going to have a piece of Romex, and there it is. So a little extra long, but you know, that's okay. So now that we've got the Romex through here, we can do the rest of this from right here. These boxes, these expander deals here, this can all be done from down here. It's not something that you have to be up in the attic to do. You can, and sometimes it's easier, but you can see this just sits. This standoff right here sets it at the right elevation, and this slides over. When you take these screws right here out, that box is adjustable. So we're going to have it somewhere close to the end here because it's pretty tight. Okay, the box is removed. So this is how you can do these from one place without having to go up in the attic. You just take it, we're going to put it up here. Of course, there's insulation in the way here, but we'll make it work. See how the foot sits right there? So we're going to line that up there and hopefully get the foot to fall on the other side. That feels correct. Okay, so now that that's in there and you kind of get it centered in the hole as much as possible, okay, we're going to take and we're going to expand this. And I went the wrong way. So this is a jack screw right here. So all I'm doing when I'm turning this is expanding this thing. All right, so after an hour of twisting, I actually pulled it back out and expanded it. This has to be code, but it's like 24 inches. This thing is almost all the way expanded because it can go twice its length, so it must be about 24 inches. So what we're going to do is we're going to crank this down until this tab goes into the wood. You know, it doesn't have to go all the way in, but, you know, you just want to make sure it's nice and tight. I might take a wrench and just crank this down. Now, when I get it tight, I'm going to want it flat right here because that bracket's going to sit over the top of it. So we want that to be as straight as possible. And you can see we're starting to sink teeth into, there's teeth on the top and on the bottom. It's starting to sink into that rafter. So that's what we want. Okay, so we got that nice and tight. The tab is in there. Here's our bracket. Like I was saying, you want to make sure it's square because this bracket, we're just going to put it right over the top here like this. Help if I had it in frame, wouldn't it? Okay, I just slipped that on there. So now, see, I can adjust it back and forth. Now Dan has the box for me. Here's the box. Now we knocked it out. It came with a bushing. If you don't have a bushing, you need to put that in there because that's what we're going to feed the Romex through. All right, so we have the box installed here, pretty easy. This particular one has 2 studs like you saw in the bracket. So you just, once you get the box situated up there, you put the 2 nuts on there, and then they have 2 more screws. So I put them there. It probably doesn't need them, but whatever. So that's all in, that's good. We got our Romex here. This room's not getting a fan immediately, so we're just gonna safety it off. Next, we're gonna go right here to where the switches need to be. All right, so Dan's just prepping the box here. He's bending the tabs. We know we need 3 on top and 1 on the bottom. I like to open these extra wide just because you're trying to fight the Romex getting it into the wall. Don't try and push the Romex through the tabs. That's probably good, Dan. Don't try and push the Romex through the tabs when you're trying to put these in here. It's impossible. So he's got to feed them in here into the old work box, what I call them. That's what they call them at Home Depot, so that's what I call them. And you know, it's just a bit of a mess trying to do this. You got all these wires you got to feed in here, and they never seem to quite be long enough. So you see he's got the 3 on top, they're in. He's gonna feed the 1 in the bottom there. I feel like this is in, like, you know, Bob Vila. You remember Bob Vila? And Bob Vila would stand there and be like, I'm Bob Vila. I'm the home guy, right? You know, like, you know, it was all about Bob Vila. And he'd go and be like, okay, so Riley, tell me, how are we doing this today? And then Bob Vila wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do anything. I always thought that was hilarious. So now we're going to find out that I didn't cut the hole big enough, probably, right? Oh, perfect. Wow. I actually got something right. So he's just kind of, Dan's just kind of pulling the wires through as he pushes the box into the wall. It takes a little patience to do this. And eventually he'll have it so the box is flush, and then we'll use, I've got my electric screwdriver, and it works pretty quick for doing this. We use the electric screwdriver to tighten the tabs, which pull it into the wall. All right, should we see if I can make you guys nauseous? Hold the camera and use an electric screwdriver at the same time. I like doing this way. It's just faster. So what happened as soon as I moved that there is that tab, you can't see it, but that tab flipped up, and now it's going to compress this against the drywall. So don't overdo it with these. Just, that's probably enough. It's very easy to go too far with this, and then you'll suck the box to the wall, and then you're like sticking screws in it to get it to hold and stuff. So there we go. So now comes the wiring. It looks like a big mess. If you're not an electrical person, it's going to look like a gigantic mess, but it really isn't. I know what everything goes to here, though. Our red is our switch leg that's already going over there. The rest of the blacks just all get tied together. That goes to one switch. We're going to have this black here because it's going up to the fan. That's going to get switched. And then, of course, we're going to bring another, the switch that's going to be switching the fan, we'll just tie another black in here to the hot. Very simple. You know, look, I'm not here to teach you guys about electrical. You need to be somewhat comfortable with this and familiar with electrical wiring and residential. You have to admire the chaos. But here we've got our ceiling fan. So we've got our hots all tied together. Brought two spurs off for the hot on either switch. Got all our neutrals right in there. Ground's properly hooked up. Grounds are all tied together, so everything's bonded. This is going up to our ceiling fan. That's a new piece of Romex that went in. Here is the old switch leg. It's going over to the other switch, and we've just quite simply just buttoned this up now and put a cover plate on it. This isn't too bad to patch up. We'll just screw the drywall to it, and Dan's got some, he'll fill it and he'll do a little texture and touch up on the paint. You'll never even know that was there. All right, so that just about wraps this up. You know, aside from this, and I started thinking about it, I know why this is here. We are directly over the garage. I bet that's a code requirement because if the fire comes up from the garage, you don't want it going up into the attic. That's what that is. So just got the plate on there, real easy. You know, those are those two switches. It looks like it's supposed to be there. You'd never know that we retrofitted it to two. We're not installing a fan today. Dan's going to do that later. But we just safetied it off right now with some wire nuts. So Aside from having to cut this hole here, which, you know, it just sucks sometimes when you got to do that. Dan's already working on patching it up here. And you see what he's doing. He's just drilling a couple of holes in there, and that's why he cut it around the stud like that. So he's just going to put 2 screws in there, and then he'll be able to patch this up, never know it was there. So anyways, that's just I don't know how quick it is. This will probably be a 30 or 40 minute video, but that's kind of the details, or the highlighted details of how you install a ceiling fan correctly. You can't just screw a box in there. Get one of the proper retrofit kits. They're available at Home Depot. You know, I think these are about 10, 15 bucks. They expand. They can fit just about anywhere you want. This will hold a fan of 70 pounds, which is way heavier than you're going to have. So anyways, that'll wrap this one up.